Jake Sullivan walked down the busy street in New Angeles, his military uniform drawing a few respectful nods from passing civilians. The year was 2087, and Earth had been part of the big galactic community for 30 years now. But most aliens still thought humans were just a simple backward species. Jake didn't mind much. He had 3 days of leave from his job as a commander in the Earth Defense Corps, and he planned to enjoy every minute of it. The afternoon sun felt good on his face as he walked past the towering buildings that reached toward the sky. Flying, cars buzzed overhead and holographic advertisements flickered on every corner. Everything seemed so advanced, so futuristic. That's why the small wooden table on the sidewalk caught his attention so quickly. A little girl sat behind the table, with a pitcher of yellow liquid and a stack of plastic cups. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and a serious expression on her young face. A handwritten cardboard sign leaned against the pitcher. In crayon letters it read, "Lemonade, $2, help save my brother." Jake stopped walking. In a world where people could print any food they wanted from machines, where drinks came from dispensers in every building, seeing an old-fashioned lemonade stand felt like stepping back in time. Most kids these days spent their time playing virtual reality games or learning advanced computer skills. This girl was doing something that children had done hundreds of years ago. He walked over to the table. The girl looked up at him with bright blue eyes that seemed too old for her face. She had been crying recently, Jake could tell, but she was trying hard to look brave. "Hi there," Jake said, crouching down so he was at her eye level. "I'd like to buy some lemonade, please." The girl straightened up in her chair. "That'll be $2, sir." Her voice was small but determined. Jake pulled out his credit chip and transferred the money to her account. The girl poured the lemonade into a cup and handed it to him. Jake took a sip. It was too sweet and a little sour at the same time, clearly made from artificial mix, but somehow it tasted better than any drink he'd had in months. "This is really good," he said, and meant it. "What's your name?" "Katie Miller," she replied, sitting up straighter. "Thank you for buying my lemonade." Jake nodded toward the sign. "Can you tell me about your brother? What kind of help does he need?" Katie's brave expression wavered for a moment, and Jake saw her bottom lip tremble slightly. But she took a deep breath and looked him straight in the eyes. "My little brother Danny is 6 years old and he's really sick," she began. "The doctors say he has something wrong with his genes. It makes him very weak and tired all the time. Sometimes he can't even get out of bed." Jake felt his heart sink. He had seen genetic diseases before, during his time in the military. They were cruel and unpredictable, especially in children. "The doctors on Earth tried to help him, but they can't fix what's wrong," Katie continued. "There's a special hospital on a space station near Proxima Centauri. They have medicine and machines that can make Danny better, but it costs 50,000 credits. Jake nearly choked on his lemonade. 50,000 credits was more money than most families made in 2 years. For a working-class family, it might as well have been 50 million. "My mom and dad both work really hard," Katie said, her voice getting smaller. "Mom works at the factory during the day and cleans offices at night. Dad drives a transport truck and fixes computers on weekends. But even working all the time, they can't save enough money fast enough. The doctors say Danny needs the treatment soon or—" She stopped talking and looked down at her hands. Jake felt anger building in his chest, but not at Katie or her family. He was angry at a system where a child had to sit on a street corner selling lemonade to try to save her brother's life. He was angry that in an age of incredible technology and wealth, families still had to choose between bankruptcy and watching their children suffer. "How much have you made so far?" Jake asked gently. Katie opened a small metal box next to the pitcher. $47.50, she said proudly. "I've been here every day after school for 2 weeks. Some people give me extra money when they hear about Danny." Jake did the math in his head. At this rate, it would take Katie over 6 years to raise 50,000 credits. Danny didn't have 6 years. "Can I ask you something, Katie?" Jake said. "Why are you doing this instead of your parents?" Katie looked up at him with those 2 old eyes again. "Mom and Dad are working so hard already. They come home so tired they can barely stay awake. I wanted to help too. I'm not old enough to get a job, but I can make lemonade. And people are nice. They stop and talk to me, and some of them tell me stories about their own kids. Jake felt his throat tighten. This little girl was showing more courage and determination than some soldiers he had served with. She was fighting for her brother's life with nothing but a pitcher of lemonade and a cardboard sign. "Tell me more about Danny," Jake said, settling. Down on the curb next to her table, Katie's face lit up for the first time since he had approached. "Danny is the best little brother ever. He's really smart and funny even when he's sick. He likes to draw pictures and tell jokes. Before he got really sick, we used to play games together every day. He always let me win, even though he was better at most games than me." She paused and wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "He doesn't complain, even when he feels terrible. He just says he's tired and needs to rest. But I can see in his eyes that he's scared sometimes. I don't want him to be scared anymore." Jake finished his lemonade and stood up. He looked down at this brave little girl who was trying to move mountains with determination and artificial lemonade mix. Something inside him shifted like a gear clicking into place. "Katie," he said, "I think you're going to save your brother, and I think you're going to do it sooner than you think." Katie tilted her head, confused. "But I've only made $47.50. Jake smiled, the first real smile he'd felt in weeks. "Sometimes the smallest actions create the biggest changes. You just keep doing what you're doing, okay? And don't give up hope." As Jake walked away, he was already reaching for his communication device. He had calls to make, people to talk to, and a story to tell. Katie Miller didn't know it yet, but her simple lemonade stand was about to change everything. Jake Sullivan couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Katie Miller's determined face and heard her small voice talking about her sick brother. He tossed and turned in his apartment until finally giving up on sleep altogether. At 4 a.m, he made himself coffee and sat at his kitchen table, staring out at the city lights. By 6 o'clock, Jake was dressed and heading to the spaceport where his ship was docked. The UES Ranger wasn't the biggest ship in the Earth Defense Corps, but it was home to Jake and his crew of 43 men and women. They had been through battles together, shared meals together, and trusted each other with their lives. If anyone would understand why Katie's story mattered, it would be them. Jake found Lieutenant Amy Carter in the ship's mess hall, eating breakfast and reading reports on her tablet. Amy was his tactical officer, a sharp woman in her early 30s who never missed a detail. She looked up when Jake sat down across from her. "You look terrible, Commander," Amy said with a slight smile. "Rough shore leave?" "Actually, yes," Jake replied. He told Amy about Katie and Danny, about the lemonade stand and the impossible amount of money needed for treatment. As he talked, other crew members began gathering around their table. Word spread quickly on a ship, and soon Jake found himself telling the story to a dozen people. 50,000 credits, whispered Chief Engineer Rick Torres, shaking his head. Rick was a big man with gentle hands who could fix anything mechanical, but he had grown up poor and knew what that kind of money meant to a working family. That's impossible for people like Katie's parents. "We could pool our money," suggested Amy. "Everyone chip in what they can." Jake appreciated the thought, but he had already done the math. Even if everyone on this ship gave everything they had, we wouldn't come close to 50,000 credits. We're military. We don't make that kind of money. The crew fell silent. They were good people who wanted to help, but they felt as helpless as Jake did. That's when Rick Torres had an idea that would change everything. "What if we told other people about Katie?" Rick said slowly. "I mean, we're not the only ones who would want to help a sick kid. There are thousands of people in the Defense Corps and millions more in the colonies. What if we shared Katie's story with all of them?" Jake frowned. "You mean like sending messages to other ships?" "More than that," Rick said, getting excited. "I mean putting it on the networks, the military channels, the civilian channels, the colony networks, everywhere. Let people know about Katie and Danny. Maybe if enough people heard the story, they could all give a little bit. Small amounts from lots of people could add up to something big." Amy leaned forward. "It could work. People love stories about brave kids, and everyone understands wanting to help your family. Jake thought about it. In the old days before space travel, people in small towns would help their neighbors when tragedy struck. Everyone would bring food or money or just their time to help out. But now people lived on different planets in different star systems. How could that same spirit of helping work across such huge distances? Let's try it, Jake decided. Rick, can you put together a message about Katie and Danny? Include a picture if possible and explain what they need. Make it simple and honest. Rick nodded eagerly. I'll have it ready in an hour. 2 hours later, Rick's message was spreading through the military networks like wildfire. It was a simple post with a picture of Katie at her lemonade stand and the basic facts about Danny's condition. Rick had included instructions on how to send money directly to the Miller family's account. At first, nothing happened. Jake checked the family's account balance every few minutes, but it stayed the same. He began to worry that the idea had been foolish, that people were too busy with their own problems to care about strangers. Then, slowly, credits began appearing in the account. 5 credits from a supply officer on Mars, 10 credits from a communications technician on the Moon, 20 credits from a retired veteran living on Europa. The amounts were small, but they kept coming. By the end of the first day, the Miller family account had grown by 300 credits. It wasn't much compared to what they needed, but it was a start. More importantly, the story was spreading beyond the military networks and into civilian channels. Jake got a message from his sister Lisa, who lived on Mars with her husband and 2 kids. She had seen Rick's post and shared it with her friends. Her friends had shared it with their friends. Within hours, the story was being passed around the Mars colonies like gossip. The same thing was happening on the Moon, on the asteroid mining stations, and on the generation ships traveling between stars. Humans had spread across the galaxy, but they were still connected by networks that carried news and stories from one world to another. Katie's story traveled along those same networks, touching hearts everywhere it went. On the second day, something unexpected happened. Jake received a call from Captain Maria Santos, who commanded a merchant ship called the New Horizon. Maria was a tough woman who had spent her life hauling cargo between star systems, but her voice was gentle when she spoke about Katie. Commander Sullivan, Maria said over the video link, I saw the story about the little girl and her brother. I want to help. Any contribution would be appreciated, Captain Santos, Jake replied. Maria shook her head. I don't have much money to give, but I have something else. My ship regularly travels to Proxima Centauri. If the family needs transport to the medical station, I'll take them for free, no charge. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Transport to Proxima Centauri usually costs several thousand credits per person. Maria was offering to donate more value than most people could afford to give in cash. That's incredibly generous, Captain, Jake said. It's what we do, Maria replied simply. We help each other. That's what makes us human. After ending the call with Maria, Jake checked the Miller family account again. The balance had grown to over 2,000 credits. Messages were pouring in from across human space. A teacher on Luna had organized her students to hold a fundraiser. Workers on an asteroid mining station had donated their overtime pay. Even humans living in alien space, working as translators or traders, were sending what they could. But the most surprising development came from an unexpected source. Dr. Paul Green, a famous xenobiologist who studied alien life forms, sent a message offering his services for free if Danny needed a human doctor familiar with advanced alien medical techniques. Jake sat back in his chair, amazed at what was happening. In just 2 days, Katie's simple lemonade stand had connected humans across the entire galaxy. People who had never met the Miller family, who lived light years away, were opening their hearts and their wallets to help a sick little boy. What Jake didn't know was that other eyes were watching this phenomenon with great interest. On Earth, alien observers were taking notes about this unusual behavior pattern. Ambassador GirlThe of the Zephyrian Empire read reports about the primitive commerce activity with confusion. His aide had documented thousands of small financial transactions all flowing toward one family, with no apparent profit motive or central organization. Explain this behavior, GirlThe demanded of his human liaison officer. The human officer, a diplomatic attaché named Robert Kelly, tried to find words that would make sense to an alien mind. "They're helping because it's the right thing to do, Ambassador. The little girl's brother is sick and people want to help him get better." Krelthos made a dismissive gesture with his forearms. "But these humans receive no benefit from this action. They gain no status, no resources, no territory. It is completely illogical." Robert Kelly smiled sadly. He realized that explaining human compassion to someone who had never felt it was like trying to describe color to someone who had been blind from birth. Some things couldn't be understood through logic alone. "Perhaps that's what makes us human, Ambassador," Robert said quietly. As the third day began, Jake checked the account balance one more time. It now showed over 5,000 credits, and the number was growing faster each hour. Messages of support were coming in from every corner of human space. Katie Miller's lemonade stand had become something much bigger than anyone had imagined. The ripple effect had begun, and it was spreading across the galaxy like a wave of hope. By the end of the first week, something amazing was happening that no one had expected. The Miller family account showed 15,000 credits, and the number kept growing every hour. Jake Sullivan stood in his ship's communication center, watching the messages pour in from across the galaxy. Each message came with a small donation and a few words of encouragement for Katie and her family. "Commander, you need to see this," called Amy Carter from her station. She pulled up a news report on the main screen. A reporter from Mars Colony News was standing in front of a school where dozens of children had set up their own lemonade stands. "These young students at New Mars Elementary have organized their own fundraiser for Danny Miller," the reporter explained. "8-year-old Tommy Chang told me that if Katie can help her brother by selling lemonade, then they can help too." The camera showed Tommy, a boy about Katie's age, standing behind a table with a sign that read, "Lemonade for Danny." Next to him, a girl named Sue Park was counting credits in a small box. "We made 200 credits today," Sue told the reporter proudly. "Tomorrow we're going to make even more." Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. Children on Mars were helping, a child on Earth they had never met. The simple act of kindness was spreading from person to person, planet to planet. Rick Torres looked up from his computer terminal. "Commander, I'm getting reports of similar fundraisers on Luna, Europa, and 3 different asteroid mining stations. It's not just kids either. The workers on mining station Alpha 7 donated their entire week's bonus pay." Amy pulled up another report. This one showed an elderly man sitting on a bench in a park on Europa. The man's name was Frank Wilson, and according to the reporter, he was a veteran of the Centauri War who lived on a small pension. "I sent everything I could spare," Frank told the camera. His weathered hands shook slightly as he spoke. "That little girl reminds me of my own granddaughter. Kids shouldn't have to worry about things like this. We adults should take care of it." The reporter asked Frank why he cared about a family he had never met. Frank looked directly into the camera, with clear blue eyes. "Because we're all human," he said simply. "That makes us family, doesn't it?" Jake had to turn away from the screen. He walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars, thinking about Frank Wilson and Tommy Chang and all the other people who were giving what they could to help strangers. In his 20 years of military service, Jake had seen the worst that humans could do to each other: war, greed, hatred, violence. But he was also seeing the best of humanity now, and it was beautiful. His thoughts were interrupted by an urgent beep from the communication system. Amy answered the call, and her eyes went wide. "Commander, it's Dr. Paul Green. He says it's important." Jake hurried back to the communication center. Dr. Green's face appeared on the screen and he was smiling broadly. "Commander Sullivan, I have wonderful news," Dr. Green said. "I've been in contact with the medical facility at Proxima Centauri. They've agreed to begin Danny's treatment as soon as he arrives. But here's the amazing part. They're so impressed by the human response to this situation that they're offering a significant discount on the treatment cost." Jake leaned forward. "How significant?" "They'll do the entire treatment for 30,000 credits instead of 50,000, Dr. Green replied. "Dr. Thaisara, who runs the facility, told me she's never seen anything like this coordination between members of a species. She wants to study human social behavior while treating Danny. Amy quickly checked the Miller family account. Commander, we're at 28,000 credits now. We're almost there. But Jake barely heard her. He was thinking about what Dr. Green had said about alien interest in human behavior. If the medical facility was impressed by human cooperation, what were other aliens thinking about this situation? The answer came sooner than expected. 2 hours later, Jake received a priority message from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Helen Brooks, the highest-ranking officer in the Earth Defense Corps, wanted to speak with him immediately. Admiral Brooks was a stern woman who had fought in 3 wars and never smiled unless absolutely necessary. When her face appeared on the screen, Jake expected to be in trouble for using military networks to spread Katie's story. Instead, the Admiral looked curious and slightly amazed. Commander Sullivan, Admiral Brooks began, I've been getting some very interesting calls from alien governments. They want to know about this human coordination phenomenon they're observing. Apparently, several species are asking questions about how humans can organize so quickly without central command or profit motive. Jake felt confused. Ma'am, I don't understand. We're just helping a sick child. That's exactly what confuses them, Commander, Admiral Brooks replied. The Zephyrian Empire has been monitoring financial transactions across human space for the past week. They've documented over 50,000 individual donations to the Miller family, coming from every human colony and outpost in known space. To them, this looks like some kind of military operation or economic strategy. The Admiral paused, and for the first time Jake could remember, she actually smiled. What they don't understand is that this is just how humans are. When we see someone in need, especially a child, we help. We don't need orders or profit incentives. We just do it because it's right. Jake nodded. Yes, ma'am, that's all we're doing. I know, Commander, and I'm proud of you for starting this. But I wanted you to know that your little lemonade stand story has attracted attention at the highest levels of galactic government. The Galactic Council is sending observers to study this phenomenon. After ending the call with Admiral Brooks, Jake sat quietly for a long time. He had started this simply to help Katie and Danny Miller. He never imagined it would become something that alien governments would study. Rick Torres interrupted his thoughts. Commander, you need to see the latest numbers. Jake looked at the account balance and gasped. 35,000 credits. They had passed the goal. But that's not the best part, Rick continued with excitement. Look at this message that just came in. On the screen appeared a video message from Katie Miller herself. She was standing in front of her lemonade stand, but now there were flowers and small gifts piled around it. People had been leaving tokens of support along with their donations. Hi everyone, Katie said to the camera, her voice stronger than Jake remembered. I want to thank all of you for helping my brother Danny. Mom and Dad showed me how much money you've all sent, and I started crying because I was so happy. Katie wiped her eyes but kept smiling. Danny is feeling a little better today. He helped me make fresh lemonade this morning, and he wanted me to tell you that he's not scared anymore. He knows that people all over the galaxy are thinking about him and want him to get better. She held up a drawing that showed stick figures holding hands in a circle around what looked like a solar system. Danny drew this picture for everyone who helped us. He says it shows all the humans in space holding hands to help each other. Mom is going to scan it and send copies to everyone who donated. Katie's expression became serious for a moment. I know 35,000 credits is more than we needed for Danny's treatment. Mom and Dad said we can use the extra money to help other kids who are sick like Danny. We're going to keep the lemonade stand going, but now it's not just for Danny anymore. It's for any kid who needs help. The video ended, and Jake found himself staring at the blank screen. What had started as one little girl trying to save her brother had become something much bigger. It had become a movement. Amy Carter spoke softly. Commander, I think we just witnessed the birth of something important. Jake nodded, still processing what he had seen. Across the galaxy, humans had come together to help 2 children they had never met. They had done it without being asked, without being organized, without expecting anything in return. They had done it simply because it was the right thing to do. And now, for the first time in galactic history, other species were taking notice of humanity, not because of their weapons or their technology, but because of their compassion. The lemonade stand had become a symbol of something uniquely human, and the galaxy was watching. 3 weeks after Jake Sullivan first bought lemonade from Katie Miller, Danny Miller was lying in a medical bed aboard Proxima Medical Station, surrounded by the most advanced alien technology in the galaxy. The 6-year-old boy looked tiny in the large treatment room, but his eyes were bright with curiosity as he watched the strange machines work around him. Captain Maria Santos had kept her promise and transported the Miller family to Proxima Centauri for free. The journey had taken 5 days, and Danny had spent most of it pressed against the ship's viewports, amazed by the stars and planets they passed. It was his first time in space, and despite being sick, he had been excited about every part of the adventure. Dr. Paul Green stood next to Danny's bed, talking quietly with Dr. Thisara, the head of the medical facility. Dr. Thisara was a Centaurian, tall and thin with smooth blue skin and large black eyes. She moved with graceful, precise motions and spoke in a voice that sounded like musical chimes. "The human child's cellular structure is responding better than we predicted," Dr. Thisara told Dr. Green. "His genetic markers are stabilizing faster than our model suggested they would." Dr. Green nodded, making notes on his tablet. "Human children are remarkably resilient. Their bodies want to heal, especially when they have strong emotional support." Dr. Thisara tilted her head, a gesture that meant confusion in Centaurian body language. "Emotional support does not affect cellular regeneration. This is established medical fact." "For most species, yes," Dr. Green agreed, "but humans are different. Hope and love actually change our brain chemistry, which affects our immune system and healing processes. Danny knows that thousands of people across the galaxy are rooting for him. That knowledge is helping his body fight the disease." The Centaurian doctor made a soft humming sound that indicated deep thought. During her long career, she had treated members of dozens of different species, but she had never worked closely with humans before. Everything about them seemed to contradict established medical science. Danny looked up at the two doctors and smiled. "Are you talking about me?" he asked. Dr. Thisara approached his bed carefully. She had read that human children could be unpredictable and emotional, but Danny seemed calm and friendly. "Yes, young human," she said in her chiming voice. "You are recovering much faster than we expected. How do you feel?" Danny thought about the question seriously. "I feel different, not sick-tired like before, just regular tired from all the medicine. And I feel happy because Katie doesn't have to worry about me anymore." "Your sister has been quite remarkable," Dr. Thisara said. "We have been monitoring the human response to her fundraising efforts. It is unlike anything we have observed in other species." Danny's eyes lit up. "Did you know that kids on Mars made lemonade stands too? And people sent pictures and drawings from all over? Mom showed me some of them. There's a whole box full of letters from people saying they hope I get better." Dr. Thisara looked at Dr. Green with what he had learned was Centaurian confusion. Why would strangers expend energy creating visual art for an individual they have never encountered? Dr. Green started to explain, but Danny answered first. "Because they're nice," Danny said simply. "People like to help other people, especially kids. That's just what people do." The simplicity of Danny's answer seemed to puzzle Dr. Thisara even more. She made more humming sounds and returned to studying the medical readouts. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Katie Miller had become something of a celebrity. News crews from across human space came to interview her at her lemonade stand. But Katie remained focused on her mission. The stand now had a new sign that read, "Lemonade Network, help kids like Danny." The extra money from Danny's fundraiser had been used to help 3 other families with sick children. Word spread quickly through social networks whenever Katie identified a new family in need, and the response was always overwhelming. Humans across the galaxy had gotten into the habit of checking the Lemonade Network's updates and contributing whatever they could. Jake Sullivan visited Katie's stand whenever he was on Earth. He had become something of an unofficial advisor to the operation, helping Katie's parents manage the flood of donations and requests for help. What amazed him most was how organized everything had become without any central planning. How do you decide which families to help next? Jake asked Katie during one of his visits. Katie looked up from the pitcher she was refilling. People send me messages about kids who need help. I read them all with Mom and Dad, and we pick the ones that seem the most urgent. Then I post about them, and people start helping right away. It's that simple? Yeah, Katie said with a shrug. People want to help. I just have to tell them who needs help. Jake shook his head in amazement. An 8-year-old girl had created a galaxy-wide mutual aid network using nothing but a lemonade stand and simple human kindness. Back at Proxima Medical Station, Dr. Thisara was conducting her own research into human behavior. She had requested permission from the Miller family to interview them about their experience, and they had agreed enthusiastically. Ben Miller, she said to Danny's father, explain to me why so many humans contributed resources to help your offspring. Ben Miller was a simple man who drove trucks and fixed computers, but he understood people better than most. He thought carefully before answering. Well, doctor, I think it's because everyone understands what it's like to love your kids more than anything else in the world. When people heard about Danny being sick, they remembered how they would feel if it was their own child. They helped us because they knew we would help them if the situation was reversed. Dr. Thisara made notes on her tablet. But statistically, the probability of reciprocal assistance is very low across such vast distances and large populations. Most contributors will never require similar help. Lisa Miller, Danny's mother, joined the conversation. That doesn't matter, doctor. People don't help because they expect something back. They help because it's the right thing to do, because every child deserves a chance to grow up healthy and happy. This behavior pattern does not exist in other species we have studied, Dr. Thisara observed. Ben and Lisa looked at each other and smiled. Maybe that's what makes us human, Lisa said softly. Dr. Thisara spent hours interviewing the staff at the medical station about their observations of human behavior. The security chief, a Zephyrian named GirlThe, told her about the daily messages of support that arrived for Danny from across human space. They send pictures drawn by their younglings, GirlThe reported, stories written by their students, musical recordings created specifically for this one sick child. None of it serves any practical purpose, yet they continue to create and send these items. Dr. Thisara reviewed video recordings of Danny reading these messages and looking at the artwork. In every recording, the child's health seemed to improve slightly. His energy increased, his appetite got better, and his test results continued to exceed expectations. There appears to be a measurable correlation between emotional stimulation and physical recovery in humans, she noted in her official report. This requires further study. After 2 weeks of treatment, Danny Miller was declared fully cured. The genetic markers that had been slowly killing him were completely gone. Dr. Thisara admitted to Dr. Green that the recovery was the fastest she had ever seen for this type of condition. On the day Danny was released from the medical station, Dr. Thisara made an unusual request. She asked if she could send a message to all the humans who had contributed to Danny's treatment. The message was broadcast across all human networks. In it, Dr. Thisara thanked the human species for allowing her to witness what she called the most remarkable display of interspecies cooperation in galactic history. Your behavior has challenged many of our assumptions about social organization and mutual assistance, she said in her chiming voice. We have learned much from observing your response to one family's crisis. You have shown us that sometimes the most advanced societies are those that care most deeply for their most vulnerable members. When Danny Miller walked off the transport ship back on Earth, he was greeted by cheering crowds and news reporters, but the first person he ran to was his sister Katie, who was waiting behind her lemonade stand. Katie, Danny shouted as he hugged her tight. I'm all better, and I brought you something. He pulled out a small crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Dr. Thisara gave this to me. She said it's a Centaurian friendship crystal. She wants you to have it because you brought all the humans together to help me. Katie held the crystal carefully, watching it pulse with gentle light. Around them, reporters were asking questions and cameras were recording, but Katie only had eyes for her little brother. "Are you really all better?" she whispered. "Really, really," Danny said with a huge smile. "And guess what? I want to help. You with the lemonade stand. There are lots more kids who need help, right?" Katie nodded, tears of joy running down her cheeks. Lots more. As the crowd celebrated around them, neither Katie nor Danny realized that their simple act of love had been watched and recorded by observers from a dozen different alien species. The Lemonade Network had become more than a charity. It had become proof that humans possessed something unique in the galaxy, the ability to care for strangers as if they were. 6 months after Danny Miller returned home from his treatment, something terrible happened in a distant part of the galaxy that would test everything the aliens had learned about human nature. The Catherian Empire had always been proud and independent. For over 1,000 years they had solved their own problems and never asked for help from other species. Their philosophy was simple. Strength came from standing alone, and asking for assistance was a sign of weakness. The Galactic Council respected this approach even if they found it cold and difficult to understand. But on a cold Tuesday morning, Commander Vex-High of the Catherian colony ship Eternal Glory faced a crisis that no amount of pride could solve. The ship was massive, home to 10,000 Catherian colonists who were traveling to establish a new settlement on the edge of known space. They had been in space for 3 years and were still 2 years away from their destination. The ship was their entire world, carrying everything they needed to survive the journey and build their new home. Commander Vex-High stood in the ship's control center, staring at readouts that told a story of disaster. The main power core was failing. Worse, the backup systems were also beginning to malfunction. The ship's engineers estimated they had maybe 10 days before total power failure, which would mean death for everyone aboard. "Status report," Commander Vex-High ordered his chief engineer. "Sir, the quantum containment field is destabilizing," Engineer Thithara replied, his voice tight with stress. "We have tried every repair procedure in our database. The damage is too extensive for our equipment to fix." Commander Vex-High felt the weight of 10,000 lives pressing down on him. According to Catherian tradition, he should solve this problem using only Catherian resources and knowledge. Asking outsiders for help would bring shame to his family name for generations. But as he looked around the control center at his worried crew, Commander Vex-High realized that tradition mattered less than the lives of his people. "Are there any ships in this sector?" he asked his communications officer. "Yes, sir. Long-range sensors show 17 vessels within 3 days' travel. Most are human ships." Commander Vex-High closed his eyes. Humans, the species that the rest of the galaxy had been talking about ever since the incident with the sick human child. The species that seemed to help others without expecting anything in return. "Send a distress signal," he ordered quietly, "to all ships in range." The communications officer's eyes went wide. In all of Catherian history, they had never asked another species for emergency assistance. "Sir, are you certain?" "Send the signal," Commander Vex-High repeated, his voice stronger. "Now. Tell them we have 10,000 colonists in danger and we need immediate help." 37 minutes later, the first response came in. It was from Captain Maria Santos aboard the merchant vessel New Horizon. Commander Vex-High remembered reading reports about Captain Santos. She was the human who had transported the Miller family to Proxima Centauri for free. "Eternal Glory, this is Captain Santos of the New Horizon," came the transmission. "We received your distress call and are changing course to assist. Estimated arrival time is 26 hours. Can you maintain life support until then?" Commander Vex-High was surprised by how quickly the response had come. "New Horizon, we can maintain basic life support for approximately 8 days, but our situation is very serious. We may need resources and expertise beyond what one ship can provide." "Understood, Eternal Glory," Captain Santos replied. "Don't worry, help is coming." What Commander Vex-High didn't know was that Captain Santos had immediately forwarded the distress call to every human ship and station within communication range. Within hours, the message had spread through human space like wildfire. Just as Katie Miller's story had months earlier, Jake Sullivan, now promoted to Admiral, was in a meeting at Earth Defense Command when the distress call reached him. He read the message twice, then stood up from the conference table. I need to take my ship to the Catherian distress signal, he announced to the room full of senior officers. Admiral Helen Brooks looked at him with concern. Jake, that's 3 days away from your current position, and the Catherians have never been particularly friendly to humanity. That doesn't matter, Jake replied. They have 10,000 people in danger. We have to help. Admiral Brooks studied Jake's face and saw the same determination that had driven him to share Katie Miller's story. She nodded slowly. Take whatever ships you need, Admiral Sullivan. Bring those people home. Meanwhile, across human space, the same scene was playing out on dozens of ships and stations. Captain Lisa Rodriguez of the mining vessel Deep Star loaded her ship with emergency power cells and headed for the coordinates. Dr. Paul Green, who had helped with Danny Miller's treatment, gathered a team of engineers and boarded the fastest ship he could find. The crew of Research Station Beta 9 sent their entire emergency supply stockpile on a high-speed courier ship. None of these humans had been ordered to help. None of them expected payment or reward. They responded simply because people were in danger and they had the ability to help. Commander Vexhai watched his sensors in amazement as ship after ship appeared on his screens. First came Captain Santos in the New Horizon. Then Admiral Sullivan arrived with 3 Defense Corps vessels. Within 48 hours, there were 21 human ships surrounding the Eternal Glory. Commander Vexhai, came Admiral Sullivan's voice over the communication system. We're here to help. Can you tell us exactly what kind of assistance you need? For a moment, Commander Vexhai couldn't speak. He had expected maybe 1 or 2 ships to respond to their distress call. Instead, humans from across the galaxy had dropped everything they were doing to rush to the aid of strangers. Admiral Sullivan, he finally replied. Our main power core is failing and our backup systems are compromised. We need new power cells, engineering expertise, and possibly evacuation capability for 10,000 colonists. We can handle all of that, Admiral Sullivan said calmly. Captain Rodriguez has enough power cells to keep you running for months. Dr. Green and his team are standing by to help your engineers. And if we need to evacuate anyone, we have enough ships here to transport your entire population. Over the next 3 days, Commander Vexhai watched something he had never seen before in his long career. Humans worked alongside his Catherian, engineers without any expectation of payment or favor. They shared their technology freely and taught his people repair techniques that weren't in any Catherian database. Captain Santos spent 18 hours straight in the Eternal Glory's engineering section, working with Catherian technicians to stabilize the power core. When she finally succeeded, she refused any offer of compensation. We help each other, she said simply when Commander Vexhai offered to pay her. That's what neighbors do. Dr. Green not only helped repair the current damage, but also trained the Catherian engineers in advanced power system maintenance that would prevent similar problems in the future. When Commander Vexhai asked why he was sharing such valuable knowledge, Dr. Green looked puzzled. Knowledge is meant to be shared, Dr. Green said. If we can help you avoid this problem in the future, then we've really helped. On the 4th day, the Eternal Glory's power systems were fully restored and functioning better than they had in years. The human ships began preparing to leave, but Commander Vexhai requested a private communication with Admiral Sullivan. Admiral, Commander Vexhai said when the connection was established, I must ask you something. Why did your people come to help us? Catherians and humans have had very little contact. We have never offered assistance to your species. We have nothing you need, yet you risked your ships and your people to save strangers. Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something that seemed obvious to him, but was apparently confusing to the Catherian commander. Commander, he finally said, a few months ago, a little human girl needed help to save her brother's life. People from across our space came together to help her, even though most of them had never met her family. We helped because it was the right thing to do. But that involved your own species, Commander Vexhai pointed out. No, Admiral Sullivan said gently. It involved people who needed help. The fact that you're Catherian doesn't change the fact that your people, your children and your families are just as important as ours. When someone is in danger, you help them. That's not a human thing or a Catherian thing. That's just the right thing to do. Commander Vexhai sat in silence for a long time after, ending the communication. In his entire life, he had never encountered thinking like this. The idea that strangers would risk their own safety to help people they had never met challenged everything he thought he knew about how the universe worked. And the human ships prepared to depart. Commander Vexhai made an unprecedented decision. He opened a channel to all the human vessels at once. "Human ships, this is Commander Vexhai of the Eternal Glory," he announced. "For 1,000 years my people have believed that strength comes from standing alone. Today, you have shown us a different kind of strength. You have shown us that true strength comes from standing together." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The Kitherian Empire will remember what you have done here. And if any human ship ever sends a distress, call in our space, we will answer." 2 years after Katie Miller first set up her lemonade stand, the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime buzzed with unusual activity. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered for what many considered the most important session in 500 years. They were here to discuss something that had never happened before in galactic history: the creation of a new species classification. Ambassador Krelthos of the Zephyrian Empire sat in his designated chair, reviewing the reports that had led to this moment. The documents told an incredible story. Since the incident with the human child and her fundraising efforts, similar patterns of behavior had been documented across human space hundreds of times. Humans consistently organized spontaneous aid for strangers across vast distances without central authority or expectation of reward. "The evidence is overwhelming," announced Chancellor Mordeth, the ancient Nexaran who presided over the council. "Humanity demonstrates unprecedented coordination capabilities that do not fit existing behavioral models for sentient species." Dr. Thisara, who had treated Danny Miller and studied human behavior extensively, stood to address the assembly. Her blue skin seemed to shimmer under the chamber's lights as she spoke. "Honored council members, in my medical career spanning 3 centuries, I have observed many species, but humans display unique neurological and social characteristics. They possess what they call empathy, the ability to understand and share the emotional experiences of others, even strangers. This drives them to provide assistance without calculating personal benefit." A murmur of interest rippled through the chamber. The Rigelian representative, Ambassador Korthon, raised one of his forearms to speak. "Dr. Thisara, many species show care for their offspring and immediate social groups. How is human behavior different?" "The scope and distance," Dr. Thisara replied. "Humans extend this care to individuals they have never met, across interstellar distances, based solely on shared species membership and perceived need. They organize complex aid networks within hours, with no central planning or command structure." She activated a holographic display showing a map of human space. Thousands of small lights indicated aid transactions over the past 2 years. Since the Miller family incident, humans have organized assistance for over 2,000 families facing medical emergencies, natural disasters, or economic hardship. Each response follows the same pattern: rapid mobilization, resource sharing, and emotional support for strangers. Commander Vexhai of the Kitherian Empire stood next. His presence at the council was itself unprecedented. Kitherians had never before participated in galactic governance discussions. "Honored Council, I speak as someone who has experienced human assistance firsthand," he began, his metallic voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "When my ship faced destruction, 17 human vessels responded to our distress call within 3 days. They saved 10,000 Kitherian lives and refused all compensation." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "This experience has led the Kitherian Empire to re-evaluate our understanding of strength and independence. We now believe that true strength may come from the ability to help others and accept help when needed." The declaration sent shocked whispers through the assembly. The Kitherian Empire's 1,000-year philosophy of isolation was legendary throughout the galaxy. Chancellor Mordeth called for order. "Commander Vexhai, are you saying that Kitherian policy has changed as a result of human intervention?" "Yes, Chancellor. We are implementing what we call cooperative strength protocols. Catherian ships now respond to distress calls from any species, and we are establishing mutual aid agreements with our neighbors. The humans showed us a better way to exist in the galaxy. Admiral Jake Sullivan, representing Earth, was invited to address the council. He stood nervously. Speaking to the most powerful beings in the galaxy felt surreal for someone who had started this journey by buying lemonade from a child. Honored members, Jake began, we don't think of our behavior as special or unusual. We help because it's the right thing to do. When we see someone in need, especially children, we respond. It's just part of being human. Ambassador GirlThe leaned forward. Admiral Sullivan, your species organizes these responses without government, orders, or economic incentives. How do you coordinate such complex operations? Jake thought about Katie Miller and her simple lemonade stand. We don't really coordinate them, Ambassador. They coordinate themselves. Someone shares a story about people who need help. Others hear it and want to help too, so they share it further. Before long, thousands of people are working together. It happens naturally. But who profits from these operations? Asked the Centaurian trade representative. What drives individuals to expend resources for strangers? Nobody profits, Jake replied simply. People help because they know it's what they would want if they were in trouble. We help because we can, and because we care. The chamber fell, silent as council members processed this concept. Many species understood trade, military alliances, and political cooperation. But the idea of systematic altruism across interstellar distances was completely foreign to most galactic civilizations. Chancellor Mordeth spoke after several minutes of deliberation. Based on the evidence presented, this council recognizes humanity as the first coordinating species in galactic history. This classification acknowledges unique behavioral patterns that benefit galactic stability and cooperation. The announcement was met with a mixture of applause and uncertain murmurs. A new species classification hadn't been created in 5 centuries. Furthermore, Chancellor Mordeth continued, this council establishes the Galactic Mutual Aid Coordination Center to be administered jointly by human representatives and volunteer species. The center will facilitate emergency response and resource sharing across all member civilizations. 6 months later, Katie Miller stood in front of a much larger lemonade stand in New Angeles Central Park. The stand had grown into a permanent pavilion with volunteers from a dozen species working alongside human staff. The sign now read, Galactic Lemonade Network, helping families across the stars. Danny Miller, now 8 years old and completely healthy, helped his sister manage the daily operations. Their simple childhood idea had evolved into the galaxy's first interspecies charity organization. Katie, said Dr. Green, who now served as the network's scientific advisor, we just received a request for help from the Altarian system. A solar storm damaged their agricultural domes and they need emergency food supplies. Katie, now 10 years old but still small for her age, nodded seriously. How many people need help? About 50,000, Dr. Green replied. Katie pulled up the network's communication system and began composing a message to be broadcast across human space and allied systems. Within hours, cargo ships would be loaded with supplies and heading toward Altarian space. Jake Sullivan, now serving as humanity's ambassador to the Galactic Council, visited the pavilion whenever he was on Earth. Today he found Katie and Danny teaching a group of young Zephyrian visitors how to make lemonade. The humans say that sharing food and drink creates friendship bonds, explained little Zixara, a Zephyrian child whose family had moved to Earth to study human social behavior. That's right, Katie said, handing Zixara a cup of lemonade. When you share something with someone, even something small, it shows them that you care about them. Danny added, and when people know you care about them, they want to care about you too. That's how friendship works. Jake watched the children from different species learning from each other and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The galaxy was changing, becoming more connected and cooperative, all because one little girl had decided to help her sick brother. That evening, as Jake prepared his weekly report for the Galactic Council, he reflected on how far they had all come. The Council now regularly used human model coordination techniques for disaster response. The Catherian Empire had helped evacuate 3 colony worlds threatened by asteroid impacts. Even the isolationist Rigelian Collective had begun participating in mutual aid networks. The most remarkable change was in the children. Across the galaxy, young beings of different species were setting up their own versions of lemonade stands, learning that helping others was normal and expected behavior. They didn't understand the old divisions between species or the traditional barriers to cooperation. Jake's communication device chimed with an incoming message. It was from Katie, sent from her home where she was doing homework. Admiral Jake. The message read, "Danny and I wanted to thank you for believing in our lemonade stand when it was just a little table on the sidewalk. Mom says we've helped over 10,000 families now. That's a lot of people. Danny drew you a picture of our new space friends. We hope you like it." Attached was a child's drawing showing humans, Catherians, Zephyrians, and other species all holding hands around an enormous lemonade stand floating in space among the stars. Jake smiled and saved the picture to his personal files. Someday, when historians studied how the galaxy learned to work together, they would probably focus on political treaties and economic agreements. But Jake would always know the truth. The galaxy changed because a little girl loved her brother enough to set up a lemonade stand, and because humans believed that every